The county map said the road ended inside the house, not at the driveway, not at the property line. Inside the house. At first I thought it was a mapping error, a misplaced endpoint, a lazy digital correction no one had bothered to fix. Then I went there. Behind the house, a road came out of the woods, crossed the yard, and disappeared through the back wall, and by evening people started walking up it. They were not breaking in. They were coming home. There is a house at the end of Coble Lane that no one has lived in for 6 years, and the reason no one lives in it is written into the county's own maps, though the county does not read its maps the way I have learned to read them. I came to the matter through work, not through any personal tie, and I want to say that plainly at the start so you understand I had no reason to invent anything. I was a field technician for a regional utility cooperative, the kind of person sent out to verify service addresses before a line gets run or a meter gets set. It is dull work. And I was good at it precisely because I did not embroider. I drove to a location, I confirmed it matched the records, I noted the discrepancies, and I moved on. In 11 years, I had never once filed a report that could not be explained by a lazy surveyor or a moved fence. The Coble Lane job was supposed to be the same. It was not. The assignment reached me because a family named Ostrander had applied for a new service connection at the far end of Coble Lane, out past where the county pavement gives up and the gravel starts. They had bought the last house on the road, the one that sits alone against 4,000 acres of the Hessam conservation land, and they wanted power run properly, instead of the failing overhead line the previous owners had limped along on. Standard. I pulled the parcel records, cross-referenced the road layer, printed my field map, and drove out on a Tuesday in the fall to walk the property and confirm the pole placements. The first thing I noticed was in the office before I ever left, and I dismissed it. The way you dismiss a thing that is only strange and not yet frightening. On the county road layer, Coble Lane ran in from the highway and terminated at the Ostrander parcel, which was correct. Dead-end roads are common out there. But the small symbol that marks a road's end, the little crossbar the county uses to mean the road stops here and goes no further, was not drawn at the property line or at the driveway. It sat inside the footprint of the house. The little printed rectangle that represented the building had the road's terminus mark squarely in its center, as though Coble Lane did not end at the house but ended inside it. I remember thinking it was sloppy digitizing, some contractor years ago snapping the endpoint onto the wrong vertex, and I made a mental note to flag it for correction and thought nothing more of it. That note is the first entry in what became a much longer list, and it is the only one on the list that has a comfortable explanation. I got to Coble Lane a little after 10. The Ostranders were a young couple with a boy of maybe 7, and they were exactly the sort of people who buy the last house on a country road, hopeful, a little overwhelmed, boxes still stacked in the front rooms. The husband, Merritt, walked me around the front of the property and pointed out where they wanted the new pole set, and his wife, Dell, brought coffee out to the porch. And the boy followed us at a distance the way children do, watching the stranger with the clipboard. It was an ordinary morning. I want that on the record, too. How ordinary it was. The coffee going cold, the dog barking somewhere, the smell of the woods, because everything after came out of that ordinary morning without any warning at all. The trouble started when I went around the back to check the rear lot line because the service drop would have to clear the tree line and I needed to see the setback. And behind the house, coming out of the conservation land through the tree line, across the backyard, and up to the rear wall of the house. There was a road. Not a driveway, not a path. A road old and worn, 2 ruts gone to hardpack with a crown of grass down the middle. The kind of road that has been driven for a very long time by people going somewhere they go often. It came out of trees that had no business having a road behind them, because behind the Ostrander tree line, there was nothing. 4,000 acres of protected land. No houses, no lane. No reason for a worn old road to exist at all. And it did not run parallel to the house or past it. It ran straight up to the back wall to a spot where a rear porch had once stood, and it went into the house, and it did not come out. I stood there for a while. I am not an imaginative man, and I did not immediately think anything supernatural. My first thought was that this was an old right-of-way, a pre-existing road that predated the conservation designation, and that whoever built the current house had simply built it across the old roadbed, and that the road appeared to enter the house because the house sat on top of where the road used to go. That is a completely reasonable explanation, and I held on to it for about 90 seconds, which is how long it took me to walk up to the back wall and see that the road did not stop at the wall. The rear wall of the house, at the width of the road, maybe 9 feet across, was not a wall. Everywhere else it was ordinary clapboard, weathered, a little paint failing under the eaves. But in that 9-foot width, where the road met it, the clapboard was not there. In its place was a continuation of the road and its shoulders and a dim recession of woods beyond, going back and into a held golden light, like the last hour of an evening that had not yet arrived, though it was mid-morning, and the yard behind me was flat gray under an overcast sky. The 2 lights did not belong to the same day. The yard was late October noon. What I could see through the wall was a low gold dusk, and I could see, faintly, laid over the road, like a reflection in glass, the inside of the house, a mudroom, a washer, coats on hooks, present and not present at the same time so that the eye could not settle, and looking too long put a pressure behind my forehead like a word I could not recall. I did not touch it, I want that noted. Some instinct older than my training told me not to put my hand into that gold light. And I have been grateful for that instinct every day since, because of what I later saw happen to the boy. I went back around front, and I asked Merritt Ostrander as levelly as I could about the road behind the house. And here is the human moment I keep returning to. The small thing that told me the family was already further into this than I was. Merritt did not react the way a man reacts when a stranger tells him there is an impossible road going into his house. He got a careful look. The look of a man who has decided not to talk about something and has just been asked about it directly, and he said, "You can see it then." Not what road, not there's no road, but you can see it then, as though the question was whether I could see it, and not whether it was there. And his wife on the porch went still, and the boy, who had drifted close, said cheerfully in the way children announce things, "The people come up it in the evening." Mom says we're not allowed to watch. I asked Merritt how long the road had been there. He said it had come in the winter before they moved in, that the previous owners had mentioned it in a way that they had taken for a joke, and that they had found it themselves the first week and had not known who to tell, because who do you tell? He said the county man who came to verify the parcel could not see it, had shown them the map to prove nothing was wrong, and that the map, if you looked, had put the end of the road inside the house, and the county man had not noticed. He said it very flatly, and I understood that flatness later. It is the tone of a person who has already lost an argument with reality and stopped expecting to win. I should have left. My job was done. The pole location was clear. And there was nothing in my remit that required me to understand a road that only some people could see. But I did not leave because of the boy and because of the way Del Ostrander had gone still on the porch, and because 11 years of never embroidering a report had left me with a stubborn need to know what a thing actually was before I wrote it down. So I asked if I could come back at the end of the day to see the road in different light, and Merritt looked at his wife, and something passed between them, and he said I could, but that I should be gone before what he called the long evening. The long evening. He said it the way you say a familiar phrase, and I asked him where he had heard it, and he could not tell me. He said it was just what the light was called out back at the end of the day. And then he looked briefly confused, the way you do when a word comes out of your mouth that you did not know you knew, and he changed the subject. I wrote long evening in my field notes and underlined it, and I did not yet know why. I came back at 4. The overcast had thickened and the real light was already going. The yard settling toward an early autumn dusk, and I went around the back with Merritt, and the road's own light had changed too, but not the same way. Where in the morning it had held a low gold, now it had deepened, richer, closer, as if the unmoving sun down that road had sunk a little nearer the horizon, while ours had done the same, the 2 evenings sliding toward night in loose parallel. And in that deepening gold, far down the road, coming up out of the conservation land, there were figures. I am going to describe them exactly and no more, because reaching for a frightening word would be inventing, and I have been careful this whole time not to invent. They were the shape of people walking, one, and then spaced behind it another and another, unhurried, coming up the worn ruts toward the house with the loose settled gait of people walking home at the end of a day. I could not see their faces. They were too far down the road, and the gold light was wrong for faces. It gave you the whole figure and withheld the one thing you wanted. But they walked like people going home, and they were coming toward the house, and they went into it at the place where the road went in, one after another. And they did not come out the front, and they were not inside the front of the house, because Merritt and I were standing at the front, and no one passed us. And the boy was at the back window. Del had told him not to watch, and he had come to the back bedroom window anyway, the way children do. And he had his hands and his forehead pressed to the glass, and he was looking down the road at the walking figures, and he was smiling, not a frightened smile. The delighted, expectant smile of a child who sees company arriving, people he is glad to see, people he has been waiting for. And I saw Del Ostrander come into that room behind him and take him by the shoulders and pull him back from the window, gently but with real strength. And I saw the boy's mouth make the word "but," the same word every child makes when pulled from something wonderful. And I understood, standing in the cold front yard, that the danger of that road was not that things came out of it. The danger was that it made you want to go in. I left before full dark, as Merritt had asked. I did not sleep much. I told myself driving home that I had witnessed an unusual optical phenomenon, a trick of 2 light sources and an old road bed and a suggestible child, and I nearly had myself convinced by the time I reached the office. But I pulled the file again the next morning, and I did the one thing my job trained me to do, which was to look at the record instead of my memory, and the record was worse than the memory. I checked the parcel history. The Coble Lane house had changed hands 4 times in 9 years, which is a great deal for the last house on a dead-end road. And each transfer was a quick one, a sale within a year or two of the previous purchase, the price dropping each time. That is the signature of a house. People flee. And in the address database, the utility records, the little dry back end of the system that no one ever reads, I found the thing that made me close the file and sit still for a long while. The service address for the house had been flagged years back by a technician whose name I did not know, with a note in the free text field, the kind of note you are not supposed to leave. It read, "Rear structure does not terminate. Do not schedule evening verification. Rear structure does not terminate." A technician years before me, standing where I had stood, had tried to write down in the only language the system gave him the thing I had seen, that the back of the house did not end, that it went on into the road, and had warned, in the one field he could reach, against sending anyone out there in the evening. And no one had ever read it, because no one reads the free text field, because the record does not care, the way the map did not care, the way the small crossbar sat calmly in the middle of the house's footprint, and frightened no one who read it for reassurance. I did not go back for the utility company. I went back on my own time. 3 days later, in the afternoon, because I could not stop thinking about the boy at the window and the way his mother had pulled him back, I told myself I was going to warn the family, though I did not know what I would tell them to do. When I got there, the front of the house had a settled, occupied wrongness, and Dell Ostrander met me on the porch, and she looked as if she had not slept in a week. She told me in a low voice, watching the doorway behind her, that it was getting harder, that her son had started setting places at the table for guests, and that when she cleared the extra plates, he looked at her as if she were the one making the mistake, that her husband had begun using words for things out back that he could not have known, that he called the deepening light the long evening as if he had said it all his life, and that twice now she had woken in the night and found one or the other of them standing at the back of the house, at the place where the road went in, looking down it at the gold light with the calm, relieved face of a person who has finally, after a long journey, come within sight of home. She said, "It's not taking them. That's what I can't make anyone understand. It's not dragging them off. It's inviting them. And they want to go, and I'm the only one who thinks there's anything wrong with wanting to go home." I understood then, as much as I have ever understood any of it, what the road was, and I will give you the whole of my understanding and no more, because the rest is guessing, and guessing would be inventing. I do not think the road appeared behind that house. I think the house came to sit at the end of the road. The road had always been there, on its own side, going where it goes, through country that only looks empty to us because nothing that stays on our side has ever had reason to build there. And the road had been coming from its far end for a very long time, worn smooth by the passage of the people who walk home along it in the long evening, coming toward one particular point. And one winter, quietly under the snow, its far end arrived at the same point where Coble Lane ended from our side. And now the house stood where 2 roads met. And to the people who walked home in the gold light, that house was not the end of Coble Lane. It was the beginning of the way in. And anyone who lives at that crossing does not stay a person of only one side for long. First they see the road, then they name its light. Then they begin to want quietly and reasonably and with great relief to walk it home. The Ostranders left. I would like to tell you I saved them, but I did not do much. I told Dell what the record said: rear structure does not terminate. Do not schedule evening verification. And I told her about the 4 quick sales, and I think the record did what my warning alone could not, because a person will dismiss a strange man's fear, but will believe a document, will believe that others before her had stood in that backyard and fled. They were gone within the month, back to the town they had come from, and I heard through the cooperative that the boy was well, that they had gotten out in time, that whatever had begun to take root in the husband loosened its hold once he was miles from the road. The house is empty now, and it will stay empty because the county map shows Coble Lane ending inside it, and I flagged that endpoint for correction as I had meant to on the very first day, and the correction would not hold. I moved the terminus mark to the property line, saved it, and the next time I opened the file, the crossbar had slid back to the center of the house's footprint, calmly, as if it had never moved, as if the map knew where the road really ends, better than I did. I stopped trying to correct it after the 3rd time. The map is only writing down in its one dry symbol a thing it can see that we mostly cannot, that the road does not stop at that house, that the house is where the road, after a very long time, finally arrives and stands open in the long evening and waits. I do not drive out to Coble Lane anymore, not even in daylight, and never toward evening, because a road worn that smooth by the walking home of that many people is not a road that gives up its destination because one frightened family got out in time. It was never coming to a place. It was coming to an end, a particular end, an open door in the last house on a dead-end road. And it is patient. And it is still there, and the crossbar still sits in the middle of the house on the county's map, calm as anything, marking the spot where our road stops and theirs begins, waiting for the next family hopeful enough to buy the last house at the end of the lane.